Hey folks, everything new under the sun. The Euphrates River. Now, this is an interesting one as well. As we talk about the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, God carrying through patterns through history in Jewish tradition, pattern equals prophecy. We have the idea of the third temple kind of mirroring and acting like a Garden of Eden where God can interact with man in some fashion, and the New Jerusalem will be again similar to the Garden of Eden. We see all these traces and these threads from history to the present and to the future, and these are carried through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. And one of these threads, which is carried all the way through, is the Euphrates River and the rivers that came out of Eden. And they had a purpose then. There was a place for them. They were named at that point. And there is a purpose and a place and a reason that they're there in the last days as well. And they have a part to play. So what you're looking at is the current mapping of the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. Now, the flood of Noah likely changed all this landscape, so tracing them back to the headwaters may not indicate where Eden is necessarily, the Garden of Eden, because these rivers don't really connect to each other anymore. You look at the Gihon and the other rivers there. You can't trace them back because the flood of Noah changed all the topography, but there are still rivers named that there. So this is from Wikipedia. The Euphrates is the longest and one of the most historically important rivers of Western Asia, together with the Tigris. It is one of the two defining rivers in Mesopotamia. Originating in Turkey, the Euphrates flows through Syria and Iraq to join the Tigris in Shat al-Arab, which empties into the Persian Gulf, so at the bottom there. So Genesis, let's start off with Genesis here. And that map you see to the bottom right, that's kind of a guess as to where these rivers might be. The Gihon, the Pishon, and the Euphrates, and so on. And it's asking the question, where is the Pishon River exactly? And kind of outlining the land of Cush and Havilah and Syria potentially there. Questions to be answered. But Genesis chapter 2 says, a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it separated and became four heads. The name of one is Pishon. That is the one that encompasses all the land of Havilah. Where there is gold, the gold of that land is good. There is the crystal and the onyx stone. The name of the second river is Gishon. That is one that encompasses the land of Cush. The name of the third is Chittikal. That one is the one that flows to the east of Asher. And the fourth river, that is Parat. Now, out of the King James, it says in the highlighted text there, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it parted and became into four heads. The name of the first is Pison, that is which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon, the same as that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third is Chittikal, that is it which goeth toward the east. And the fourth river is Euphrates. So Parat equals Euphrates. So we have the mention of these significant rivers. And just a little thing about the Garden of Eden. If these four rivers all flow forth from the Garden of Eden, their identification should give us some clue as to where the whereabouts of the garden. The problem is, however, that there is no central location from which all these rivers flow. The Euphrates and the Tigris are in the northeast region, whereas the two Nile rivers are in the southwest. And this is the idea where the flood of Noah changed all this topography. So these rivers were likely named that after the fact, based on legend and story passed along, through Noah's sons and daughters, etc. And so these rivers were kind of renamed that, but they likely weren't the original locations. Very likely were not, because they all came to a point, and that is just outside the Garden of Eden prior to the flood of Noah. But it's interesting to look at these and know that there are at least rivers named that. So this article is from May 6, 2021, and the Euphrates River has been decreasing. Now, not necessarily by weapons of war or governments using it as a tactic of war, although there are power stations on the rivers that the various countries are fighting about. It says, since the beginning of May, catastrophic scenes of tremendous decline in water level of Euphrates, the longest river of Western Asia, became a meme on social media platforms. And there you see an image of it. And again, why we talk about the decline is because it comes up in Bible prophecy. And you see there Revelation chapter 14 to 15 and Revelation 16 verse 12. The Bible says that the Euphrates will dry up so that the kings from the east may be prepared. This is thought to be a reference to the Antichrist and to his army coming from the east to invade Israel. And Revelation chapter 16 says that the final battle between good and evil will take place at a place called Armageddon, which is thought to be located in modern-day Israel. The Euphrates River will be involved in this battle, as it says that the river will dry up so that the kings of the east can cross. Now, we're going to take a look at that. But isn't it interesting, if you recall the prior video about the battle and bringing it to the current day, the battle between China and Taiwan that is shaping up, and the war games that the U.S. has done to determine what could happen if the U.S. battles back and defends Taiwan from China. Great losses on both sides. But I found this interesting. This is from a CNN article here. China. So U.S. would have heavy losses, but look at this. This is interesting, that China would lose 90% of its amphibious fleet, 52 major surface warships. Note that in the scriptures it says that there are horses and horsemen riding during this battle in scriptures. It says, and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Verse 14, and this is Revelation chapter 9, 14 and 15. And I believe this talks about the period of wrath, the last 3.5 years of the 7-year period. But it says, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. So again, during the period of the wrath of God. Verse 16, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. And 200,000, that's 200 million foot soldiers. And the only country that could stand up an army of that many people, that many men, would be China. With their billions of people, they could actually stand up an army of that many fighting men. Interesting that the requirement is that really that the Euphrates goes dry, and then they march over with their army of horsemen. Again, interesting that during this battle that is war gamed between U.S. and China and Taiwan, is that China loses a lot of their warships, and it says a lot of their navy disbands because they're completely destroyed during this battle. Is that why they're going across the dried up Euphrates on horses? Because the rest of their war machine has been taken out. Their planes, their trains, their automobiles, their mechanized infantry, etc., is taken out from prior wars, something like this. So part of the war game, and it's linked above there, says China also suffers heavily. Its navy is in shambles. The core of its amphibious forces is broken. Tens of thousands of soldiers are prisoners of war. The report estimated China would suffer about 10,000 troops killed and lose 155 combat aircraft and 138 major ships. That's a large portion of the hardware that they need to use in a war and to move men long distances, for example, to go to war maybe against Israel or something. And so effectively they're walking across land to get to Israel and to get to the Battle of Armageddon. Interesting. Here's an image before and after. You can see at the bottom there. 2022. You've got this tower. Let me put that there. If you've got this tower in the water in 2021, then just a year later, 2022, it's exposed. Now, again, another interesting thing is it almost looks like this tower is, I don't know what it's for, but it almost looks like it was built when the Euphrates was lower anyways. So something to think about there, but question for another time. But this prophecy of the Euphrates comes up in the book of Jeremiah as well. And it says, the prophet Jeremiah described how the waters of Babylon, the region currently including Syria and Iraq, would dry up as punishment for their idolatrous practices, the devastation being so complete as to render the region, once part of the so-called Fertile Crescent, uninhabitable. Now, do we know of a battle that leaves Syria uninhabitable, specifically Damascus? Ezekiel 38 and 39. It leaves Damascus in a ruinous heap, and it's uninhabitable. So the same thing is going to happen to the larger region of Syria and Iraq, apparently, according to this. Jeremiah 50, 38 and 39 says, a drought against its waters, that they be dried up, for it is a land of idols. They are besotted by their dread images. Assuredly, wildcats and hyenas shall dwell there, and ostriches shall dwell there. It shall never be settled again, nor inhabited throughout the ages. So a drought against its waters, that they shall be dried up, is a drying of the waters happening. Well, you can go Google Euphrates River and drought and drying up, and you can see these images as well. Now, tying it into Christian and Muslim eschatology, interesting that the Muslims also have a similar sort of eschatology. Is there a grain of truth there? You know, any religion in the world, any story, legend, always has a thread, a tiny grain of truth there. If most legends and traditions and things aren't completely hoaxes or completely made up. There's always a kind of a bit of truth that they're based on. So does Muslim eschatology have a little bit of truth? It may do. It may be somewhat based off of Christian eschatology and maybe Old Testament prophecies as well. It says both the Christian and Muslim eschatology include prophecies of the drying up of the Euphrates, signaling in the end of days. So in their eschatology, it signals the end of days. In Islam, some of the hadiths suggest that the Euphrates will dry up, revealing unknown treasures that will cause strife and war. And this idea of waters decreasing, with the whole global warming thing, revealing treasures, revealing things that we've never seen before, maybe thousands of years old. And it's going to cause strife and war. It reminded me of the hooks in the jaws of Russia marching into Israel, but maybe a similar situation for other nations where these goods, this gold, silver, whatever may be hidden under the water that we didn't previously have access to easily, could spur wars. And of course, we don't need anything else to spur any more wars, but more will be coming, and this will cause even more people to get up, to get angry, to get jealous, and to go to war and to battle against each other in the last days. In the Christian book of Revelation, it is prophesied that in the near future, the Potamos, Euphrates, or breaking forth like water of the Middle East, will dry up in preparation for the battle of Armageddon. So it is coming down the pipe. Is the world getting ready? Are the rivers drying up to make way for the kings of the East and the infantry? Are the world situations and the wargaming predicting that many ships will be sunk and be destroyed in battle to the point where countries will be basically going back to foot soldiers and horses to battle in the day of Armageddon? I believe so. I believe, and this could implicate also the idea of an electromagnetic pulse, which could take out all the electronics and military vehicles, etc., that folks would otherwise use. I do prefer to take the Bible as literally as possible, as much as I can, and I think the more literal we take it, the more it ends up to be, true, based on things we never saw coming. Like electromagnetic pulses, like nuclear war, which could render vehicles and modern weaponry useless potentially. So very interesting thing. Keep an eye on it. I know this has been a bit of a disjointed video on the Euphrates River, but it is in Bible prophecy. It is something that's coming to pass. We see it happening now. We know down the line what's going to happen when it does dry up. The kings of the East are going to march. And so if it's drying up now, how close are we to the final battle of Armageddon. I believe it happens during the second half of the 7-year period. That means, at least we could be 3.5 years out from this taking place. I think we know that the Lord's going to return soon. Things are happening in the world that are just incredible to see. I don't think any of us thought we would live in a time such as this, with the craziness going on in the world. And so you need to have faith in Jesus Christ, because ultimately that's the only thing that's going to get you through to the end of it, and to save your soul for eternity. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll leave it there, and we'll see you in the next video.